Hello, today we are actually going to start our writing. First we are going to write our introduction. Remember, we're using our outline. Our outline is our essay. So the more work you did on your essay, the easier writing the introduction as well as the body paragraphs, the easier that will be. Our introductions are going to be very cookie cutter. So I think about what is the purpose of a cookie cutter? It is to cut out cookies so that they all look alike. Okay, so our introductions are going to be cookie cutter introductions, which means that they are all going to have the same organization. They're going to be 5 sentences. The first sentence for everybody is going to be your thesis statement. You will find your thesis statement already written on your outline. For some of you, I definitely think your thesis statement needs a little spicing up, change of words, add some more unique words to it, say it in a different way, but otherwise you should have a thesis statement on your outline, and that is going to be your first sentence of your introduction. Then you are going to have 3 sentences to introduce each of your subtopics. You're going to say transition word first, subtopic number 1, another subtopic number 2, and then finally subtopic number 3. And then your last sentence is going to be a closing sentence, and that is rewording your thesis in a way that makes it feel like the end. And I do have a slide of examples of closing sentences coming up here. Okay, so just to kind of review, remember in an introduction, no details are given. So I think back to when we did our opening statements of the trial of SpongeBob. Remember, we didn't include any evidence in our opening statement. An opening statement and introduction are basically the same thing. We don't give any details. We are just introducing our subtopics. The body paragraphs, paragraphs 2, 3, and 4, that's where we will give all of those details. As a reminder, we're doing very cookie cutter. We're doing 5 sentences, thesis, first, another, finally, and then a closing sentence. So I have 2 different examples here. Here's the first example. First, I start with my thesis. There are many exciting things to do in Maui, Hawaii. And then I'm going into my 3 subtopics. All visitors to Maui should dedicate a few days to enjoying the fabulous beaches. That's subtopic number 1. Another great tourist attraction is the Halakala Center. That's subtopic number 2. And then I use the transition word finally. A trip to Maui would not be complete without a trip on the road to Hana and back. That's subtopic number 3. Here's my closing sentence. Including these 3 activities in a Maui vacation would give any tourist a great experience. Okay, so I have a thesis. I introduce my subtopics 1, 2, 3, and then I have a closing sentence. All right, here is another example. I start with my thesis. For the Jewish citizens forced to live in the Krakow ghetto, life was incredibly difficult. And then I use the transition words for my 3 subtopics. First, living quarters were incredibly cramped and limited. Another major difficulty those in Krakow had to deal with was the lack of sanitation, which led to the spread of diseases. Finally, residents of the Krakow ghetto regularly experienced torture and witnessed death. So those are my 3 subtopics. Now I'm going into my closing sentence. All of these things combined made life a trial for those forced in Krakow against their will. So same thing, I start with my thesis. I have first, another, and finally to introduce my 3 subtopics. Each subtopic is a separate sentence, and then I have a closing sentence. Go back to this slide. I highly recommend you kind of just use this as a template. Remember, you start with your thesis, then you're doing first, another, finally for your 3 subtopics, and you're ending with a closing sentence. Awesome. After this, you should be able to write your introduction, 5 sentences. Good luck. This slide is an example of closing sentences. You totally could use the organization and template of one of these, switch out with your information and use one, or you can just use this slide to get ideas for how you want to write your closing sentences. So feel free to use the template, put your information in, or just use it to get your ideas. So we have visiting these 3 attractions in Chicago, which will ensure visitors have a good time. With the many attractions at Navy Pier, vacationers can't go wrong with including this stop in their trip. Including these 3 attractions and a trip to Chicago, tourists are sure to have a great trip, or visitors will for sure have a vacation they will remember after including these events in their trip. So those are just 4 examples. There's lots of other examples that would also be correct for a closing sentence. Way back when we first started talking about claims and formal writing and essays, we talked about how we write in third person. We want formal writing to be written in third person, and we, for some reason, have a habit to use the word you when we write, and you is second person. And so when you write you, which most everybody will find you somewhere in your essay, it's just totally human nature, we are going to switch out you, and you're going to think about, like, when you say you, who are you talking about? And are you talking about travelers, visitors, tourists, vacationers, adventurous, Americans? Think about who is you, and most likely that list that I just gave for us, because ours is tourism centered, our essay is, most likely one of those is going to work for you. Maybe specifically though, if you're doing Nashville, maybe you're talking about country music lovers. Maybe if you are specifically talking about all sports thing, you're talking about sports lovers. If you're talking about outdoors things, maybe you're talking about adventurous or outdoorsy people, okay? So think about in your essay specifically, what kind of people are you gearing your essay towards? Who do you want to come visit? And you really got to think about your subtopics when you're thinking about who you're talking about. Okay, but we're placing all yous with one of those other words to make it third person. All right, so you should be able to work on your introduction.